Rod walked into Ian's room and smiled softly. "Ian, let me get you ready," Rod said. Ian looked up from the bed, holding his iPad close like it was the most important thing in the world. "Okay," Ian said, "I'm happy I got my iPad back, but when does the lock get off me?" Rod sat beside him for a second, keeping his voice calm. "We're happy you learned your lesson, buddy," Rod said. "But like me and Daddy Bob told you, only bath time, otherwise it stays on full time for now." Ian frowned and looked down. "That's not fair." "I know it feels that way," Rod said. "But this is what we agreed on after what happened. You have your iPad back and that's a big step. Now let me help you get changed, then we'll get you in your power chair so we can go." Ian gave a small sigh but nodded. "Okay." Rod helped him get ready with gentle hands, talking him through each step so Ian didn't feel rushed. Ian stayed quiet for most of it, still upset about the lock, but he didn't fight Rod. He just held his iPad and tapped the screen a few times, like having it back made him feel a little more in control. Once Ian was changed and dressed, Rod adjusted his clothes and made sure everything was comfortable. "There," Rod said, "all set." Ian looked at him. "You and Daddy Bob still mad?" Rod shook his head. "No, we're not mad, we just need you safe and we need you to follow the rules." Ian's face softened a little. "I tried." "I know," Rod said, "and that's why you got your iPad back." Rod brought Ian's power chair closer and helped him transfer safely. Once Ian was settled, Rod checked the straps, the footrests, and the tablet mount before stepping back. Ian looked down at himself, then at Rod. "I still hate the lock." Rod gave him a small smile. "You're allowed to hate it, you still have to wear it." Ian rolled his eyes. "Mean." "Caregiver," Rod corrected gently, "not mean." Ian tried not to smile but failed a little. Rod opened the door and called down the hallway, "Bob, he's ready." Bob's voice came from the other room. "Good, let's get going." Ian looked at Rod one more time. "Can I use my iPad in the van?" Rod nodded. "Yes, but no complaining the whole ride." Ian lifted the iPad slightly. "Deal." Before they left, Rod picked up Ian's headphones from the side table and gently placed them over Ian's ears. Ian looked up at him. "Why headphones?" Rod smiled. "Because you like your music in the van, remember." Ian gave him a suspicious look but tapped his iPad and started playing a video. Once Rod made sure the volume was comfortable and Ian was distracted, he stepped a few feet away with Bob. Bob lowered his voice. "He's still asking." Rod nodded. "Yeah, he keeps asking when the lock comes off." Bob sighed and glanced toward Ian, who still had his headphones on and was focused on his iPad. "It's not coming off except for bath time," Bob said. "I know," Rod said. "I told him that." Bob crossed his arms. "Once was too much, Rod. I don't want him thinking this is something he can argue his way out of." Rod nodded again. "I agree. To be extra safe, he can't get on those websites anymore without a code. I put the restrictions on his iPad this morning." Bob's face softened a little, but he still looked serious. "Good, he needs his iPad, but he also needs boundaries." "That's what I told him," Rod said. "He earned it back, but it's not the same as before. No private browsing, no unsafe websites, and anything outside his allowed apps needs one of us to approve it." Bob looked back at Ian. Ian was tapping on the screen, humming softly under the headphones like he had no idea they were talking about him. "He's going to be mad when he figures that out," Bob said. Rod gave a small shrug. "Probably, but mad is better than unsafe." Bob nodded. "Exactly." Rod looked at Ian for a moment, then said quietly, "He is trying, Bob, I can tell. He just keeps testing the rule because he wants to know if we really mean it." Bob's voice got gentler. "And we do." Rod looked back at him. "Full time except bath time." Bob nodded. "Full time except bath time, and the iPad stays protected." Rod took a breath, then walked back over to Ian and tapped his shoulder. Ian pulled one headphone slightly off his ear. "Ready to go?" Rod asked. Ian looked between Rod and Bob. "Were you talking about me?" Bob smiled softly. "A little." Ian frowned. "Good or bad?" Rod leaned down. "Caregiver stuff, nothing you need to worry about right now." Ian narrowed his eyes. "That means rules." Bob chuckled. "Smart boy." Ian groaned and put his headphone back on. "I hate rules." Rod moved behind Ian's power chair and started guiding him toward the door. I know, but rules are part of why you got your iPad back. Ian looked down at the screen, then mumbled, I still like having it back. Rod smiled, then keep showing us you can handle it. Bob opened the front door for them, one good choice at a time, Ian. Ian didn't answer right away. He just held his iPad closed, the headphones still over his ears, and let Rod guide him outside. As they got Ian settled near the van, Fran called. Bob answered and put the phone to his ear. Hey, Fran. Fran's voice came through the speaker. You guys are coming. Bob glanced at Rod, then looked over at Ian, who still had his headphones on and was focused on his iPad. Yeah, Bob said, we're on our way to pick you up. Ian looked up for a second, seeing Bob on the phone, but he couldn't hear the call clearly through the headphones. He went back to tapping on his iPad. Rod leaned closer to Bob and mouthed quietly, she knows I texted her. Bob nodded a little. Rod kept his voice low and mouthed again, so all three of us are on the same page, she won't tell him. Bob turned slightly away from Ian and spoke softly into the phone. Fran, Rod filled you in, right? Fran sighed, yeah, I know, I'm not going to say anything to Ian. Thank you, Bob said. He keeps asking and we're trying not to make it a whole fight every 5 minutes. Fran's voice softened, is he okay? Bob looked back at Ian. Ian was sitting in his power chair, holding his iPad closed, pretending not to care that the adults were talking, but Bob knew better. He's upset, Bob said, but he's okay. He got his iPad back, so that helped. Fran gave a small laugh. That probably made his whole day. It did, Bob said, but the rules are still the rules. Rod nodded beside him. Fran said, I get it, I'll back you both up. If he asks me, I'll tell him the same thing, bath time only. Bob relaxed a little, that's all we need. Rod quietly added, and don't mention the website restrictions unless he brings it up. Bob repeated into the phone. Rod said don't bring up the website restrictions unless Ian notices first. Fran was quiet for a second, then said, yeah, good idea, no need to add another reason for him to spiral. Bob looked at Rod and gave him a thumbs up. Ian suddenly pulled one side of his headphones off. Who is that? Bob turned back with a calm smile. Fran. Ian's face brightened a little. We picking her up? Rod nodded. Yeah, that's where we're going. Ian looked suspiciously between them. Did she ask about me? Bob smiled. Of course she asked about you. Ian sat back in his chair, trying not to look happy. What did she say? Rod opened the van door. She said she's ready and waiting. Ian narrowed his eyes. That's all. Bob walked over and gently fixed Ian's headphones. That's all you need to know, buddy. Ian huffed. Everyone always says that when they're hiding stuff. Rod chuckled, or when it's boring adult stuff. Ian looked at him. I don't believe you. Rod smiled. You don't have to, you just have to get in the van. Ian groaned, but he didn't argue. Rod helped guide his power chair onto the lift while Bob stayed close to make sure everything was safe. As the lift rose, Ian held his iPad tightly against his chest. Fran better not be weird. Bob looked up at him. Fran loves you, she's just going to be Fran. Ian looked away. Good. Rod secured the power chair inside the van and checked the straps twice. Bob climbed in after him and shut the door. As Rod started the van, Bob texted Fran one more time. We're leaving now, same page, don't bring it up unless he asks. A few seconds later, Fran replied. Got it, I'll back you both up. Bob put his phone away and looked back at Ian. Ian had both headphones on again, but his eyes were on Bob like he knew something was happening. Bob smiled softly. You okay back there? Ian shrugged, I guess. Rod glanced at him in the mirror. We're proud of you for having a better morning. Ian looked down at his iPad. Even with the lock? Bob nodded. Even with the lock. Ian went quiet for a moment, then said, I still want it off. Rod kept his voice calm. I know. Bob added, and the answer is still bath time only. Ian sighed hard and leaned back in his chair. I hate when you both agree. Rod smiled a little. That's kind of the point, buddy. Ian didn't answer. He just turned his attention back to his iPad as the van pulled away from the house. When they pulled into the parking lot to pick up Fran, Ray looked over at Bob. Bob, wait for Fran, Ray said. I'll take Ian to the restroom so I can change him. Ian immediately looked up from his iPad. I'm dry. Ray gave him a look. Ian, you always say that. Ian frowned, because I am. Ray shook his head gently. And every time we check, you're wet or messy, so let's not argue, we're going to the family restroom. Ian crossed his arms the best he could in his power chair. This is unfair. Bob stepped closer and kept his voice calm. Buddy, this is not a punishment, it's just care. Ian looked at Bob, then at Ray. But I said I'm dry. Ray walked behind Ian's chair and started guiding him toward the entrance. And I heard you, we're still checking. Ian groaned, everyone thinks I'm lying. No, Ray said, we think you don't always know until we check, that's different. That made Ian quiet for a second. Bob stayed near the van looking toward the sidewalk for Fran. I'll wait here for her, text me if you need help. Ray nodded, got it. Ian looked back at Bob, don't tell Fran. Bob gave him a soft smile. I'm not going to announce your business, Ian. Ian looked down at his iPad, good. Ray guided Ian inside and found the family restroom. Once they were in, Ray locked the door and spoke gently. Okay, buddy, let's get you taken care of quick. Ian kept his eyes on the floor. I hate this part. I know, Ray said, but you'll feel better after. Ian sighed but didn't fight him. Ray helped him through the change carefully and respectfully, keeping everything calm and routine. He didn't tease him or make a big deal out of it. He just did what needed to be done. After a few minutes, Ray helped Ian get settled back into his clothes and checked that he was comfortable in his power chair. There, Ray said, all clean. Ian looked away, was I wet? Ray paused, then answered honestly, yeah, buddy. Ian's face turned red. I told you I was dry. I know you thought you were, Ray said, that's why we check. Ian held his iPad tighter. Fran is going to know. No, she isn't, Ray said, not unless you tell her. Ian looked at him, promise. Ray nodded, promise. Ian breathed out slowly, okay. Ray washed his hands, then helped Ian out of the family restroom. When they got back near the entrance, Bob was standing with Fran. Fran smiled the second she saw Ian. There he is. Ian looked suspicious. Did Bob tell you anything? Fran raised an eyebrow. He told me you got your iPad back. Ian relaxed a little. Oh. Fran smiled. That's big news. Ian tried not to look proud. Yeah, I earned it. Bob nodded. You did. Ray stepped beside Bob and gave him a small look that told him everything was handled. Bob understood and didn't say a word about it. Fran walked beside Ian's chair as they headed back toward the van. So, are you letting me pick the music, or are you going to be bossy with the iPad? Ian looked up at her. I just got it back, I'm bossy today. Fran laughed, fair enough. For the first time that morning, Ian smiled without trying to hide it. But as they got closer to the van, Ian looked at Ray, his face still red with embarrassment. Ray, Ian said quietly, now I don't know if what's wrong with me. Rod, who had been waiting near Bob and Fran, heard him and stepped closer. Nothing is wrong with you, Ian. Ian shook his head, upset. No, something is. I feel all the changes around me, it's a lot, and now I don't even know if I pee on myself, what the hell. Ray stopped Ian's power chair for a moment and crouched down so they were eye level. Ian, listen to me, that doesn't mean something is wrong with you, it means your body is going through a lot and sometimes your brain doesn't catch every signal. Ian looked down at his iPad, but he wasn't typing or watching anything now. He was just staring at the screen. Rod put a hand gently on Ian's shoulder. You've had stress, changes, rules, routines, and a lot of emotions hitting you all at once. That can make everything feel confusing. Ian's voice cracked, but I used to know. Bob stepped closer too. Sometimes people lose track of body signals when they're overwhelmed. That doesn't make you bad, it doesn't make you broken. Ian looked at Bob, then why does it feel like I'm getting worse? Fran, who had stayed quiet until then, moved beside him. Because you're noticing everything now, that doesn't always mean worse, sometimes it means you're scared. Ian swallowed hard, I am scared. Rod's face softened, I know, buddy. Ian looked away fast, like he hated that they could all see it. I don't want everyone checking me all the time, Ian said. I don't want to be wrong about my own body. Ray nodded, I get that, but checking you isn't us saying you failed, it's us making sure you're comfortable and clean. Ian muttered, feels like failing. Bob shook his head. It is. Rod leaned closer. Ian, you got your iPad back because you showed us you could handle a step forward. This right here is another step, not pretending you're okay, saying you're scared, that's a good thing. Ian blinked hard, doesn't feel good. No, Rod said, but it matters. Fran gave him a small smile, and nobody here thinks less of you. Ian looked at her quickly, you promise. Fran nodded, I promise. Ian looked at Ray, so what do I do? Ray stood up slowly. For now, we keep the routine. We check before long rides, before going places, and when your caregivers think you need it. And if you feel unsure, you tell us. No shame. Ian sighed, I hate no shame talks. Bob smiled a little, that's because you need them. Ian gave him a tired look, mean. Honest, Bob said. Rod squeezed Ian's shoulder once. You are not broken, you are overwhelmed, big difference. Ian was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded a little. Okay, Ian whispered. Ray stepped behind his chair again, ready to go. Ian wiped his face with the back of his hand. Yeah, but no one talks about this in the van. Fran lifted both hands, fine by me. Bob nodded, agreed. Rod smiled gently, caregiver promise. Ian looked at all of them, still embarrassed, still frustrated, but not alone. Okay, he said again, a little stronger this time. Back in the van, Ian looked down at the iPad in his lap for a long moment, then held it out toward Rod. Here, Ian said quietly, take the iPad, I need to relax anyway without it. Rod looked surprised, you can have it, buddy. Ian shook his head, no thanks. Rod studied his face for a second, then nodded, okay. He took the iPad gently, not making a big deal out of it. Ian leaned back in his power chair and closed his eyes like the whole morning had finally caught up with him. Bob glanced at Rod, then at Ian, you sure? Ian kept his eyes closed, yeah, my head is too loud. Fran's face softened, that makes sense. Ian let out a slow breath, I don't want to think about rules or the lock or my body or anything, just quiet. Rod nodded, then quiet is what you get. Ray stepped beside Ian's chair. We can keep the van calm, no heavy talks unless you bring it up. Ian opened one eye, promise. Bob answered first, promise. Fran smiled gently, I'll even behave and not pick annoying music. Ian almost smiled, that's new. Fran laughed softly, don't get used to it. Rod put the iPad safely in his bag, then came back and rested a hand on Ian's shoulder. I'm proud of you. Ian frowned a little, for giving up my iPad. For knowing you needed a break, Rod said. Ian looked away, I didn't want to spiral. Bob nodded, that's a good choice. Ian swallowed and looked down at his lap, I still hate all this. I know, Rod said, you can hate it and still make good choices. Ian was quiet for a moment, then whispered, I'm trying. Fran stepped closer, we can tell. Ray guided Ian toward the van while everyone stayed calm around him. Nobody pushed him to talk, nobody teased him, nobody acted like giving up the iPad was childish or dramatic. It was just Ian saying he needed quiet. And for once, instead of fighting the feeling, he let the people around him help him through it. As Rod secured Ian's power chair in the van, Ian leaned his head back and closed his eyes again. Bob climbed in and sat near him, you good? Ian nodded slowly, just tired. Rod checked the straps one more time, then rest, we'll wake you when we get there. Ian opened his eyes just enough to look at Rod, you still got my iPad. Rod nodded, safe in my bag. Ian relaxed a little, okay. Fran buckled in and spoke softly from the seat behind him. No pressure today, Ian, just one step at a time. Ian didn't answer, but his shoulders dropped a little. After a while, Ian opened his eyes. Rod, Ian said softly. Rod turned a little, yeah, buddy. Ian looked at the bag where his iPad was. I knew about the passcode before you gave it back. Rod's face changed like he was about to say something, but Ian lifted his hand and stopped him. No, Ian said, let me say it. Rod stayed quiet. Ian swallowed hard, thank you for protecting me from me. Bob looked over, surprised by how serious Ian sounded. Ian kept going, his voice shaky but clear. After I told you and Bob why I looked that up, I knew you were keeping me safe. I was mad, but I knew. Rod's face softened, Ian. Ian shook his head. I still hate it. I hate the lock, I hate the code, I hate needing you guys to stop me from doing dumb stuff, but I know why. Bob leaned forward a little. That means a lot to hear. Ian looked at him. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to get scared and look up stuff that makes me feel worse. Rod nodded slowly. That's why the code is there, not to punish you, to slow the moment down. Ian wiped his eyes quickly. I know. Fran stayed quiet, but her eyes were soft. Ian looked down at his lap. When my head gets loud, I don't always think, I just do stuff, then after I feel stupid and ashamed. Bob's voice was gentle. You're not stupid, you were overwhelmed. Ian gave a small, sad laugh. That seems to be the word of the day. Rod smiled a little, because it fits. Ian breathed out. I think giving you the iPad was the first time today I didn't wait until I got in trouble. Bob nodded. That was a good choice. Rod reached back and put a hand on Ian's shoulder. A really good choice. Ian leaned into the touch just a little. Can I ask something? Always, Rod said. Ian looked between Rod and Bob. When I'm doing better, can we talk about the rules again? Not today, not tomorrow, just someday. Rod glanced at Bob. Bob nodded once. Someday, yes. Rod looked back at Ian. When you're doing better and we all feel safe, we can talk about it, but for now, the rules stay. Ian nodded. Bath time only. Rod's voice stayed calm. Bath time only. And the iPad code stays, Bob added. Ian sighed, but this time it wasn't angry. Yeah, I know. Fran finally spoke softly. That was brave, Ian. Ian looked embarrassed. Don't make it weird. Fran smiled. Too late, I'm proud of you. Ian rolled his eyes, but he didn't argue. Rod squeezed his shoulder once before letting go. You don't have to be perfect today, you just have to keep being honest. Ian looked out the window. I can try. Bob smiled. Trying counts. Ian closed his eyes again, but his face looked calmer than before. The lock was still there, the rules were still there, the passcode was still there. But for the first time, Ian wasn't only seeing them as things being done to him. He was starting to understand they were also there to catch him when he didn't know how to catch himself. A little while later, Ian started shifting in his power chair, his face tense as he moved against the pommel and the front of his diaper. At first, Rod thought Ian was just trying to get comfortable, but then he noticed Ian's hands gripping the armrests and his breathing getting uneven. Rod's voice stayed calm. Ian. Ian looked away fast. I'm fine. Rod didn't argue. He reached for the joystick and gently tilted Ian's chair back just enough to take pressure off him. We're almost home, Rod said softly. Just relax. Ian closed his eyes and let out a shaky breath. I'm trying. I know, Rod said. That's why I'm helping before it turns into something bigger. Bob looked back from the front seat but kept his voice low. You okay, buddy? Ian swallowed. I don't know, my body feels weird again. Fran stayed quiet, not wanting to embarrass him, but her face showed concern. Rod kept one hand near the chair controls. Nothing bad is happening, you're overwhelmed, tired, and your body is reacting to too much at once. We're not mad. Ian opened his eyes a little. I hate when I don't know what's happening. I know, Rod said, but you don't have to figure it out alone. Ian's shoulders slowly dropped as the tilt took some of the pressure away. He stopped moving and focused on breathing. Rod nodded gently. Good, just like that. Breathe in, breathe out. We'll get home, get you settled, and let you rest. Ian whispered, no big talk. No big talk, Bob said, not unless you want one. Ian looked toward Rod, and no one makes fun of me. Rod's face softened. Never. Fran leaned forward a little. Ian, nobody here is judging you. Ian blinked hard and looked down. Feels like everyone can see every bad thing I do. Rod shook his head. This isn't bad, this is you having a hard moment and us helping you through it. The van got quiet again. Ian kept his eyes closed, breathing slower now while Rod watched him carefully through the mirror. A few minutes later, Rod turned onto their street. Almost there, Rod said. Ian gave a small nod. Okay. When the van pulled into the driveway, Ian looked tired more than upset. Rod parked, then turned back to him. We're home, Rod said. We'll take this slow. Ian nodded again. Slow is good. Bob opened the door and Rod got ready to unload Ian's chair. Nobody rushed him, nobody teased him, nobody made the moment bigger than it had to be. They just helped him home. Rod rolled Ian's power chair into the house and shut the door behind them. Ian, we're home, Rod said gently. No one here but us. Ian kept his eyes down, his face red. This is embarrassing. I did that in front of my sister. I wasn't trying to. Rod moved in front of him and crouched a little so Ian didn't have to look up. I know you were. Ian shook his head. She saw me acting weird. She knows something happened. She saw you having a hard moment, Rod said. That's all. Ian's eyes filled fast. It felt like I had no control. Rod's voice stayed calm. Your body reacted. That doesn't mean you wanted attention. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. Ian swallowed hard. I hate this. I hate that everyone has to help me and watch me and know stuff about me. Rod nodded. I know that's a lot to carry. Ian finally looked at him. Is Fran mad? No, Rod said. Fran is not mad. She loves you. She was worried, not judging. Ian wiped his face with his sleeve. I don't want to talk to her. You don't have to right now, Rod said. You can have space. Bob came in quietly behind them and set the bags down. Ian, buddy, nobody is upset with you. Ian looked away. I'm upset with me. Bob's face softened. That's the part we need to be careful with. You're allowed to feel embarrassed, but you don't get to turn it into hatting yourself. Ian gave a shaky breath. I don't know how not to. Rod stood and gently adjusted Ian's chair so he was more comfortable. Then we take the next small step. We get you settled, we check if you need care, and then you rest. No big lecture. Ian looked nervous. Do I need a change? Rod answered honestly. We'll check, but we'll do it calmly, just like always. Ian's voice got small. Can it just be you? Rod nodded. Yeah, Bob can give us space. Bob immediately stepped back. Of course, I'll be in the kitchen. Ian watched Bob leave, then looked back at Rod. I didn't mean to make it weird. You didn't, Rod said. The moment felt big because you were scared and embarrassed. We're not going to make it bigger. Ian nodded, but tears slipped down anyway. I don't want Fran to think I'm gross. Rod gently wiped one tear from Ian's cheek. She doesn't. She thinks you're her brother who had a rough day. Ian closed his eyes. I need quiet. Then quiet first, Rod said. We'll go slow. Rod guided Ian toward his room, keeping the house calm around him. No teasing, no questions from the hallway, no one making him explain something he didn't fully understand himself. Just Rod beside him, steady and patient. When they reached Ian's room, Rod stopped the chair and spoke softly. You're safe, Ian. Ian opened his eyes a little, even when I'm embarrassed. Especially then, Rod said. Ian nodded weakly. Okay. Rod helped Ian get settled in his room and kept his voice calm. Ian, Rod said gently, you're starting to have a rash. Ian looked away fast. Great, one more thing. Rod shook his head. It's not your fault, but we need to take care of it before it gets worse. Ian's face turned red. I hate this. I know, Rod said, but this is body care, not shame. Ian stayed quiet, still looking at the wall. Rod continued carefully. Also, the hair down there needs to be trimmed so it's easier to keep you clean. It might lower the chance of you getting another rash next time. Ian swallowed hard. That's embarrassing. Rod nodded. I know it feels that way, but I'm telling you because I care about you, not because I'm judging you. Ian looked back at him. Do we have to do it now? No, Rod said. Not this second. First we get the rash cream on, get you comfortable, and let you rest. Later we can talk about trimming. You get a say in how we do it. Ian blinked. I do. Of course you do, Rod said. It's your body. We're helping with care, but that doesn't mean you lose your voice. Ian took a shaky breath. Can it just be you and Bob when we talk about it, not Fran, not Ray? Rod nodded. Yes, just me and Bob. Ian relaxed a little. Okay. Rod grabbed the rash cream and spoke softly through each step, keeping the moment calm and private. He didn't rush Ian and he didn't make jokes. He just treated it like normal care because that's what Ian needed it to be. After Rod finished, he helped Ian get comfortable again and adjusted the blanket over him. There, Rod said, that should help. Ian looked tired. Do I have to sit in my chair? No, Rod said, you've had a long day. You can rest in bed for a while. Ian nodded. Good. Rod sat beside him for a moment. Ian stared at the ceiling. I feel like every day there's something new wrong with me. Rod's face softened. Nothing is wrong with you, your body needs care, that's different. Ian's eyes watered, it doesn't feel different. I know, Rod said, but we're going to keep reminding you until it does. Ian was quiet for a moment, then whispered, thanks for not making fun of me. Rod gently squeezed his shoulder, never. Ian closed his eyes, can I just sleep? Yeah, Rod said, sleep will be right here. Ian nodded faintly, finally letting himself relax. Rod stayed until Ian's breathing slowed, then quietly stepped out into the hallway, closing the door most of the way behind him. Bob was waiting nearby. How is he? Bob asked softly. Rod sighed, embarrassed, tired, starting to rash. Bob frowned, we'll keep an eye on it. Rod nodded, and we need to talk to him later about trimming for hygiene, but not now. Bob looked toward Ian's door, not now, let him rest. Inside the room, Ian shifted under the blanket and opened his eyes for just a second. Rod. Rod turned back from the doorway, yeah, buddy. Ian looked embarrassed, but he forced himself to ask, was that why I moved against my pommel that fast? Rod came back to the side of the bed and kept his voice gentle, yes, I think so. Ian covered part of his face with his hand, I wasn't trying to do anything weird. I know, Rod said right away. Your skin was irritated and the pressure from the diaper, the lock, and the chair pommel probably made everything feel worse. Your body was trying to get away from the discomfort, even if it didn't look that way. Ian looked at him, but you changed me at the airport and I was good. You were good then, Rod said, but rashes can start fast, especially after a ride, heat, rubbing, and sitting for a while. You might have been fine when Ray checked you, then got irritated later. Ian frowned, so I didn't do it on purpose. Rod shook his head, no, you were uncomfortable, that's different. Ian let out a shaky breath, I thought everyone thought I was being gross. Rod's face softened, no one thought that, we saw you having a hard moment and we helped. Ian stared at the blanket, Fran saw. Fran saw you uncomfortable, Rod said, that's all, and she loves you. Ian's eyes watered, I hate that my body makes everything look bad. Rod sat beside him, your body didn't do anything bad, it gave us a sign that something needed care, that's why we checked, that's why we found the rash. Ian nodded slowly, trying to accept it. Rod continued, next time if you feel pressure, itching, burning, or weird rubbing, you tell us, even if it's embarrassing. We can tilt your chair, adjust you, check the diaper, or take a break before it gets worse. Ian looked at him, even if I don't know how to explain it. Then just say something feels wrong, Rod said, that's enough. Ian was quiet for a moment, something felt wrong. I know, Rod said, and now we know what to watch for. Ian wiped his face, I'm sorry. You don't need to be sorry for needing care. I keep needing care. Rod nodded, and we keep giving it, that's how this works. Ian looked tired again, can you tell Bob I wasn't trying? Rod smiled softly, Bob already knows. Ian blinked, he does. He knows you, Rod said, and he knows the difference between acting out and being overwhelmed. Ian closed his eyes, good. Rod pulled the blanket up a little more, rest now, we'll keep the area clean, use the cream and check again later, no big talk. Ian nodded, okay. Rod stood but Ian reached for his hand. Rod. Yes. Ian whispered, thank you for not making me feel gross. Rod squeezed his hand gently, never buddy. Ian let go and sank back into the pillow, finally looking less scared. The moment in the van still embarrassed him, but now it had an explanation. It wasn't him being bad, it wasn't him trying to make anyone uncomfortable. It was his body asking for help the only way it knew how. And this time Rod had heard it. Later Ian stayed quiet for a while, then looked at Rod and Ray. If the hair gets cut, Ian said, all of it. Ray nodded gently, okay. Rod looked at Ian carefully, you sure? Ian swallowed, embarrassed but certain. Yeah, if we're doing it for hygiene then I don't want half of it, I don't want it pulling, holding sweat, or making the rash worse. Rod nodded, that makes sense. Ian looked away, I still hate talking about it. I know, Rod said, but you did a good job saying what you want. Ray kept his voice calm, we'll do it safely, not rushed, and if you need a break you say stop. Ian looked back at him, I can say stop. Rod answered right away, always it's your body. Ian breathed out slowly, okay. Ray stepped back a little. Not right now though, your skin is already irritated. We should let the cream work first and not make the rash angrier. Ian frowned, so later. Later, Rod said, after your skin calms down, we'll make sure it's clean and safe. Ian nodded, good, because I don't want this rash thing again. Rod gave him a soft smile, that's the goal. Ian pulled the blanket up a little. Can Bob know but Fran not know? Rod nodded, Bob can know because he helps with care, Fran doesn't need details. Ray added, your privacy still matters, Ian. Ian looked down, sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Rod sat beside him again, then we'll keep proving it does, care doesn't mean everyone gets to know everything. Ian was quiet for a moment, then whispered, thank you. Rod gently squeezed his shoulder, you're welcome. Ray moved toward the door, I'll let Bob know we're giving you quiet time. Ian nodded, tell him I'm not mad. Rod smiled a little, you sure? Ian sighed, I'm still mad at the lock, not him. Ray chuckled softly, that's progress. Ian rolled his eyes, but he looked calmer now. A few days later, Ray, Rod, Ian, and Bob were all in the living room when the laser hair removal technician arrived. Ian sat in his power chair, quiet and nervous. He had already said he wanted it done, but now that the appointment was real, his stomach felt tight. The technician set his bag down and spoke calmly. Before we start, I need to go over the price and consent. It's $650 up front for today's visit. Bob nodded and took out his card. That's fine. The technician looked at Ian, not Bob or Rod. Ian, are you okay with this? Ian swallowed, everyone got quiet and waited for his answer. Ian looked down at his hands, then back up. I don't want to rub against my chair like that in public next time. I don't want another rash, so do it. Rod stepped closer. Buddy, you can say yes, but you also get to say stop at any time. Ian nodded, I know. Ray added, and this is for hygiene, nothing else. If you get uncomfortable, we pause. Ian let out a shaky breath. Okay. The technician nodded. That works. We'll keep this professional and private. I'll explain everything before I do it, and your caregivers can stay only if you want them there. Ian looked at Rod first, then Bob. Rod stays, Bob can be close but not in the room. Bob nodded right away, that's okay. Ray asked, you want me out too? Ian nodded, yeah, sorry. Ray gave him a gentle smile, no sorry, your choice. Rod helped Ian get ready in the most private way possible, keeping a towel and blanket positioned so Ian didn't feel exposed. The technician stayed respectful, explained the process, and reminded Ian again that he could stop. Ian's face was red, but his voice was stronger than before. I'm still embarrassed. Rod stood beside him. I know, but you're handling it. Ian looked at the ceiling. I just don't want my body causing problems again. Rod shook his head. Your body didn't cause problems, it needed care. This is one way we're trying to make care easier. The technician began slowly, checking in with Ian often. You doing okay? Rod asked. Ian nodded tightly. Yeah, it feels weird, but I'm okay. Want a break? Not yet. Rod stayed calm, one hand resting near Ian's shoulder, not crowding him. Ian kept breathing through it, sometimes closing his eyes, sometimes opening them to make sure Rod was still there. After a while, the technician paused. You're doing well, we're almost done for today. Ian gave a weak laugh. Good, because I hate this. Rod smiled a little. You can hate it and still be brave. Ian looked at him. I'm not brave, I'm tired of being embarrassed. That counts, Rod said. When the appointment was finished, the technician went over aftercare instructions with Rod and Ian. Keep the area clean, watch for irritation, avoid extra rubbing, use gentle products, call if anything looked wrong. Ian listened, then looked at Rod. So this might help. Rod nodded. It should help lower the chance of irritation and make cleaning easier. Ian leaned back in his chair, exhausted. Good. Bob knocked softly from the hall. Can I come in? Ian pulled the blanket tighter, then nodded. Yeah. Bob came in and looked at Ian's face, not anywhere else. You okay? Ian nodded. I did it. Bob smiled softly. I'm proud of you. Ian looked down. Don't make a big deal. I won't, Bob said, but I'm still proud. Ray peeked in from the doorway. All done. Ian nodded. Yeah. Ray gave him a thumbs up. Good job, champ. Ian rolled his eyes, too many proud people. Rod laughed softly, get used to it. Ian sighed, but this time he didn't look ashamed. He looked tired, relieved, and a little safer in his own skin. It had been embarrassing. It had been uncomfortable. But it had also been his choice. And that mattered. The technician finished packing up his supplies, then paused before leaving. I know you're a grown man, the technician said gently, looking at Ian with respect, but if you have to wear diapers full-time, using powder or a skin barrier can help. It may keep the area drier and lower the chance of irritation. Ian immediately frowned, more baby stuff. Ray crossed his arms and gave Ian a simple look, powder or more rashes. Ian groaned, that is not fair. Rod sat beside Ian's power chair. It's not about baby stuff, it's about skin care. Ian looked away, it feels like baby stuff. Bob stepped closer but kept his voice calm. A lot of adults use products like that for medical care, sweating, skin folds, or incontinence. It doesn't make you a baby, it means you're taking care of your body. Ian's face was still red. I hate needing all this. I know, Rod said, but the rash hurt and you hated what happened in public. This is one way to help prevent that. The technician nodded. Use the kind your doctor or caregiver says is safe for your skin. Don't overdo it, just enough to keep things dry, and if the rash gets worse, call your doctor. Ian sighed hard, so this is just part of the routine now. Ray answered honestly, yeah, at least for now. Ian looked at Rod, every change. Rod shook his head. Not every single time unless your skin needs it. We'll watch your skin and use it when it helps, same with cream. Ian was quiet for a second. Can we not call it baby powder? Bob nodded, deal. Rod smiled softly, skin powder. Ian pointed at him, care powder. Rod laughed a little, care powder works. Ray nodded, fine, care powder. Ian leaned back in his chair, tired but calmer. I still hate it. Rod patted his shoulder, you're allowed to hate it. Ian looked at Ray, but if I say no? Ray's voice softened. Then we talk about why, but if your skin is getting bad, we're going to strongly recommend it because we care about you. Ian muttered, that sounds like caregiver talk. Bob smiled, because it is. The technician picked up his bag. You handled today well, Ian. Ian looked embarrassed again, thanks. After the technician left, the house got quiet. Ian sat there for a moment thinking about everything, the laser treatment, the rash, the lock, the diapers, the new rules, and now care powder. It's a lot, Ian whispered. Rod nodded, it is. Ian looked at him, but I don't want another rash. Then we keep your routine simple, Rod said, clean, dry, protected, and checked before long rides. Ian sighed, I hate that makes sense. Ray gave him a small smile, welcome to being responsible. Ian rolled his eyes, worst club ever. Bob laughed softly, maybe, but you're doing better than you think. Ian looked down at his lap, can I rest now? Rod nodded, yes, you earned quiet time. Ian gave a small nod, and no one says baby powder. Rod held up his hand, care powder only. Ian relaxed a little, good. Ray looked at Bob and Rod, see, same page. Ian closed his eyes, I hate when all of you are on the same page. Bob smiled, that's how we keep you safe. Ian didn't argue this time. He still hated the routine. He still hated the embarrassment. But for once, he understood the choice in front of him clearly. Care powder or more rashes. And Ian hated rashes more. Ian sat quietly for a few minutes after the technician left, staring down at his hands. Then he whispered, my body is. He stopped like he didn't even know how to finish the sentence. Ray stepped closer and crouched beside Ian's power chair. Your body is changing, that's it. Ian shook his head, it feels worse than changing. Rod moved beside him, what does it feel like? Ian swallowed, like I don't know it anymore, like I used to understand when I was wet or uncomfortable or upset and now everything feels mixed together. Ray nodded, that can happen when your body is under stress, you've had a lot of changes in a short time. Ian looked at him, but what if I stay like this? Bob's voice was gentle, then we adjust with you but we don't assume the worst today. Ian rubbed his face. I hate that I need all these things now, the diapers, the checks, the lock, the powder, the chair tilt, the skin stuff, it feels like my whole body is a problem. Rod shook his head. Your body is not a problem, your body needs support. Ian looked away. That sounds nicer than it feels. I know, Rod said, but it's still true. Ray rested a hand on Ian's shoulder. You're not failing because your care routine got bigger, you're learning what your body needs now. Ian let out a bitter little laugh. I liked my old body signals better. Bob nodded. I get that. Ian looked at him. Do you? Bob stepped closer. I don't know exactly what it feels like for you, but I do know it's scary when something changes and you can't control it. Ian's eyes watered. I'm scared I'll never feel normal again. Rod crouched in front of him. Normal might look different for a while, but different doesn't mean hopeless. Ian breathed in slowly. So what do I do? Ray answered softly. You tell us when something feels wrong, even if you don't know what it is. We check your skin, we keep you clean and dry, we use the care powder when you need it, and we give your body time to settle. Ian frowned. And the lock? Rod didn't dodge the question. The lock stays except for bath time. Ian sighed. I know. Bob added, but that rule is because your body is bad. It's because you're still learning how to stay safe when your emotions and body signals get too loud. Ian looked down. I hate that it makes sense. Rod smiled softly. You say that a lot. Because it keeps happening, Ian muttered. Ray chuckled. That's called growing up. Ian gave him a tired look. I'm already grown. Ray nodded, and grown people still have to learn new routines. Ian was quiet for a moment, then whispered, my body is changing. Rod nodded. Yeah. Ian looked at all three of them. And you're not mad? Bob shook his head. No. Ray said, not even a little. Rod squeezed Ian's shoulder. We're here with you. Ian blinked hard, then nodded. Okay. Rod stood and moved behind his chair. Let's get you settled somewhere comfortable. Ian leaned back. Can I just rest in my chair for a bit, not bed yet? Sure, Rod said. Chair tilt. Ian hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, just a little. Rod gently tilted the chair back, careful and slow. Ian's shoulders relaxed as the pressure eased. That better? Rod asked. Ian closed his eyes. Yeah. Bob grabbed a blanket and placed it over Ian's lap. Ray dimmed the living room lights a little. Nobody pushed him to talk more. After a while, Ian whispered. Care powder sounds stupid. Rod smiled. It was your name. I know, Ian said, still stupid. Bob laughed softly. Then we'll call it skin powder. Ian opened one eye. Fine, skin powder. Ray grinned. Look at that, negotiation. Ian closed his eye again. Don't ruin it. Rod sat nearby and watched Ian finally settle. His body was changing, his care was changing, his routine was changing. But the people around him had not changed. They were still there. And for that moment, Ian let that be enough.